Yes, hello everyone and welcome to all our West Australian football fans to another edition of Around the WAFL, a stacked show coming your way. We're going to review all three games that took place this past weekend for round 10 of the WAFL and also have a chat with Claremont star Alec Waterman. He had a great game on Sunday in that 9-point win over East Perth, and we'll also cast the Player of the Year votes and where the leaderboard's at after the first half of competition. You're live on the Around the WAFL YouTube channel and where you get your podcast. Paul Persick in the studio alongside the talented Ethan Roth, once again back from a stint in Colts commentary. Ethan, it's been another interesting weekend of football, but of course, a very emotional one with the passing of John Todd last Tuesday following the recordings of last week's episode. We'll speak about him in a little bit, but Toddy, what a great man.
Yeah, what a great man. Changed WA footy, will never be forgotten. And yeah, obviously that news came out pretty much straight after we finished recording last week. So very sad news. And I know South Freo and Swans are going to pay tribute this week. But yeah, in terms of the weekend, not the best tipping wise, but that's all right. We keep on keeping on.
Absolutely. Keep on keeping on, as the saying. And 0-3 for that tipping, by the way. We had a nightmare. And I have to say, I blame you for baiting me into tipping the West Coast
Put my
Eagles.
hand up.
Well, I'm glad you did, but what a great weekend of action it certainly was in WAFL Round 10 for 2024. And here's how you can win big in the second half of the season.
Punt from 50, win. Little too into the game, win. Too cocky, almost a win. Risking it all for the glory, win. It's win-win at the WAFL. Great footy, food and entertainment. Find out more at waffle.com.au.
Yeah, some big win-wins in the WAFL in 2024, and one player that had a big win for the Tigers was Alec Waterman. What a role he played up forward on Sunday in that 9-point win over East Perth, and he's good enough to join us here on today's edition of Around the WAFL. Alec, welcome along, mate. A great win.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really good win.
Especially in such tough conditions, when the ground was slippery, the ball was obviously very difficult to get clean possession of, but also, it was all down to your experienced midfield and also your backline as well that really held East Perth up well.
Yeah, I think as a team we've really focused on that, just doing the fundamentals a bit better. That's something we were pretty poor with to start the year, and the last 2 weeks have been a huge step in the right direction, and that's across the board.
3 goals for yourself up forward. It must feel nice just to be back playing every week and having that continuity back at the Tigers in 2024.
Yeah, it's been good. The last few weeks have been a big step in the right direction for me personally. I had a pretty average start to the year and just building off playing very minimal footy last year. So it was always going to take a bit of time, but hopefully I've turned a bit of a corner.
You've strung back-to-back wins now for the Tigers after an indifferent start to the season. At this time of the year, you're starting to feel like, the confidence is starting to get back within the playing group and the chances of making the final five are looking more likely given how open the competition is?
Yeah, for sure. And I prefer to have not started the way we had to sort of get to this point, but that's sometimes how footy goes. If you're a little bit off, the competition's so even. And so we've had some pretty big conversations the last few weeks about what we want to stand for. And, the last 2 weeks we've responded, and the challenge is to keep it going.
And the consistency, it's probably been a bit off at the start of the year, as you said. Is it as simple as just playing 4 quarters of footy and not, taking the focus off? Because obviously this competition is so tight and anyone can get you on any given day.
Yeah, I think for us it was just trying to identify why it was happening. We're a pretty talented team and we've got some really good players, some really experienced players, but why was it happening? And yeah, it's not as simple as just on one day going, yep, that's why we're losing. But I think as a group we've identified a handful of things that we're not doing good enough, and we just started with that. And that's not to say that we've perfected it, but it's obviously a step in the right direction. And yeah, we just got to keep it going. We know what it looks like now.
What about your teammate Jai Bolton? Didn't he turn back the clock? 37 disposals in what was a really inspirational performance. He really lifted that side in what was a very critical game.
Yeah, he was huge. He's obviously known for what he can do with the footy and his impact on games from a skill point of view. But yeah, I think his effort that he puts in probably goes under the radar. So a game like that, when the game was on the line, especially the last quarter, he willed himself, and that effort at the end there to set up that goal is pretty much summed up his day and what he's capable of.
And coming up against Perth in the next game, I think you guys didn't verse them too long ago and got the chocolates on them. So what do you think the keys are stopping them? Because, they've gotten really close to some of the top teams in the competition in recent times.
Yeah, for sure. And I know to start the year, they've been pretty unlucky with some injuries to some key players, and I'm not too sure where they're at. But regardless, they're a really tricky opponent, and I think, they knocked us off in the pre-season, and I think they were with us for 3 quarters last time, so it's a massive game for us. Every game now till the end of the season is massive. We're pretty much playing finals for the rest of the year if we want to make it, and Perth in 2 weeks is no different.
So he's saying, sort of every game in the second half of the season would be sort of a sudden death final, because obviously with the competition so close, any team could drop out on any given week?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know mathematically we can still make it and make it well, but we have to win the rest of our games.
Well, no doubt that win against East Perth will spring your confidence up a little bit more going into the bye, and then, of course, the game against Perth on July 22nd. Alec, thanks very much for your time. A terrific performance up forward with 3 goals against East Perth. Have a great week off, and all the best against the Demons in 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
That was Alec Waterman, of course, star forward of the Claremont Football Club. 3 goals for him, an impressive performance, especially when the side were under tremendous pressure. They hadn't been able to string back-to-back wins together. They've been a bit indifferent all around the ground, but these last 2 games have been absolutely important for the Tigers. It really gets them back into contention there, equal with Swan Districts and East Fremantle on 16 points and on the fringes of the 5.
So talented, but obviously, that inconsistency in the first half of the season has cost them. But yeah, it's interesting that they're sort of approaching every game as a sudden death final. You almost need to do that. And for Alec, I mean, it's just great to see him back out there. Obviously, was at the West Coast Eagles WAFL side last year. We know what challenges that presents in itself, but just to see him back out there, fit and firing, and showing why he went to the next level off the back of that 2020 grand final appearance, which was largely off his own boot.
Absolutely. He's averaging 1 or 2 goals a game this season, so he's really been that viable option up forward. Can he maintain that form? Well, that remains to be seen. I reckon he can, and I reckon Claremont can if they just be able to keep on playing those good 4 quarters of footy, no matter what the conditions. This is Around the WAFL, your go-to podcast for season 2024, and for some awfully good WAFL apparel, check this out. Introducing the WAFL Merch Shop, your ultimate destination for all things WAFL. From jerseys to scarves to caps, show your support for the WAFL in style. Grab exclusive merchandise now and gear up to cheer louder than ever before. Visit shop.wafl.com.au today and let your passion shine. Just how good is that WAFL merch store? I actually got my WAFL beanie last week, and I tell you what, it is an absolute ripper.
Need to rock it in the studio, mate. Need to see it firsthand.
Someday we'll get a chance to rock the WAFL merch in the studio during the 2024 season. Now, let's recap the 3 games for round 10. Of course, an abbreviated edition like last Thursday. Only 3 games, and we're going to start it off with Subiaco and the West Coast Eagles. An easy win for the Lions over the Eagles, 16-16 to 6-11. The Lions clicked into gear in the second quarter, Ethan, and they were never challenged.
Yeah, it was a must-win game for them, wasn't it? The 10 a.m. start, we thought West Coast were the specialty of those time slots, but I guess didn't have the experience of the previous week with that Northern win. Hutchinson went out, Jai Cully went out. They were a bit, sort of light on in that aspect. I mean, you look at someone like a Josh Rotham, he was probably the most experienced out there for them. And right from the outset, the Lions just dominated the middle of the ground, really, and surged it forward. And I mean, it probably was a bit of a tight first quarter, but I think the second quarter onwards, up until halftime, that's when the Lions really started to surge. They kept the Eagles goalless in that second term as well.
Absolutely. They held the Eagles to just 4 goals after quarter time, in turn kicking 13 themselves, and they were able to surge forward with repeat inside 50 entries through efficient supply from the likes of Jordan Snadden, who was impressive, 23 disposals, and of course 6 inside 50s. Liam Hickmott as well. He was magnificent as well, providing some great service. Will Hickmott too with 24 disposals. And we said last week when Subiaco had their early season struggles, they were relying too heavily on Greg Clark. This was a really good time to really show Subiaco have got some good spread in the midfield, not with Snadden, Taj Schofield for one, and also Will Hickmott. So, we're going to start to see the full extent of Subiaco's midfield depth in this stage in the season.
Yeah, Jordan Staden especially, I mean, he's been plugging away in the reserves for a long time. And, I know he came to Subiaco for more senior opportunity. We're talking about a guy who actually spent a year or two on the Eagles list. So he's very talented. Kicked a nice goal from outside 50
Very
as
good
well.
goal.
But those guys with leg speed, Taj Schofield as well, he's got massive leg speed as well. And he's had his own injury troubles coming back through from the reserves. But if they can get those guys through the midfield, a bit more run and
Responsibility of being that leading midfield. It's only small steps. I mean, he's going to blossom into a fine ruckman in the future.
yeah, he will take time. Obviously, the big rucks, they take a handful of years to sort of develop, don't they?
right.
And Wagonek, I mean, he debuted in round 1, 2023 in league footy, and sort of maybe he's gone missing a bit since then, but he's really coming into his own now off the back of this opportunity. And, if he can work in the future with Cody Eaton, then that will spread the load even more so.
Zane True and Clay Hall were reported for the West Coast Eagles. True reported for striking Taj Schofield, and Clay Hall reported for striking Glenn Savini. I can happily say both were cleared of those reports, and they will be free to play after the bye. So that's good news for the Eagles.
Good news, but I think they need to be careful. That's a couple of times it's happened to
Yeah.
Clay Hall as well, but he was fantastic. Probably the Eagles' best in the midfield with
Absolutely.
24 touches on the day as well, and really striving himself for an AFL opportunity. I think Adam Simpson sort of let the people know that he's probably not too far away.
Absolutely.
From a senior point of
Got
view.
plenty of potential. Up forward for Subiaco, there wasn't a convincing performance by Jack Mayo, I have to say. He didn't have his kicking boots on Saturday. Only 1 goal, 4, and the 16 disposals. He's still really missing that backup from Ben Sokol. Obviously, he's going to be out for some time with that injury he sustained in the state game. So if Jack Mayo can, get his accuracy back in the groove and get some viable support up forward, that potency for the Subiaco forward line could be back to, what it was a few years ago when they were dominating the competition. Not bagging Jack Mayo for his performance. I reckon he just needs to take some time and polish up his kicking in front of goal. It wasn't his best outing, but he's a very good forward.
Well, the good thing is he had more supply and better
Yes.
opportunity. Obviously, 1 goal, 4, but they trialled Lockie Henderson up there, who brother of Campbell. So,
That's right.
one Henderson goes out, one Henderson comes in. But he kicked 2 goals in the first quarter, so maybe he's a player who they can sort of work around. He's been there for a while, waiting in the wings. So, yeah, I don't think it's all doom and gloom from that point of view. But they need, you can only rely on his so-calls when he comes back to a certain extent.
Absolutely, but all signs are positive for the Lions. A big win for them, 16-16 to 6-11 over the West Coast Eagles on the Saturday morning match. Sunday games, East Perth, Claremont, they were able to hold them up and get the points in a stirring contest by 9.
Where the footy and the Tiger fans were loving it.
Well, they certainly
Sullivan
were.
Logistics Stadium, and you can't blame them as well. I mean, Jai Bolton sort of wound back the clock to a certain extent, in terms of the midfield with 37 disposals. He's been playing like that for a while, but I like to see him more in the midfield, and I know they really rate his kick-off half-back,
Yeah,
but
they
he
do.
was the difference when he was thrown right into the thick of it in the guts.
That's, I reckon, where Ash Prescott needs to put him in a little bit more. Jai Bolton is more suited as a good inside midfielder. He has been for many, many years. He's won premierships, best and fairest, Sandover medalists in midfield. They do rate his kick-off halfback highly because he's very efficient. He's able to hit targets. But especially when you've got Declan Mountford, out with an ankle injury, that, does sort of deplete their options down back and in midfield. So I reckon it was a good move for Ashley Prescott to get Jai Bolton to stay in the midfield when Declan Mountford went out with that injury.
Yeah, it was needed, and he set up the stealing goal with Smallwood on the goal line as well. So that was quite fitting in itself.
Certainly was. That goal at the end of the match to seal the deal. It just summed up Jai's day. I mean, he carried that team, so to speak, when the chips were down. And in a great game of wet weather footy, even though the scoreboard, doesn't say it was a pleasant game from a scoreboard point of view, 9-5 to 6-14, but the intensity that both sides gave out there at Sullivan Logistics Stadium, that's a wet weather finals quality clash.
Yeah, well, sometimes those low scoring, high intensity yet tussle games, in trying conditions can be more entertaining because it's like, how important it is to kick a goal, and it's almost worth double in a way. So, a few people tipped Claremont in this game, and I don't know, they must have had some inkling that they knew it was coming, because a lot of people actually tipped the Tigers, and it's proven wonders.
Absolutely. We both went with the Royals on that occasion because we were thinking that, despite the conditions, East Perth's depth, especially in midfield, was going to be too much, and you also got some good forward options in the likes of Mitch Crowder, who can kick a couple of good goals from midfield, but the wet weather really threw them off. It really threw them off. They're not used to playing wet weather football. We saw the same thing in the elimination final last year against the same team, and Claremont got the result then. They got the result again here, so the wet weather sort of gave Claremont a nice little bit of a leg up in that game. But not just Jai Bolton, who was impressive. Oliver Eastland just continues to be a rampaging bull on the ruck. That matchup with Scotty Jones was just sensational. The winner on that one for me was Ollie Eastland.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jones kicked a goal, a nice goal, but I have to agree with you there on that one. And Claremont, they seem to have the Royals measure in recent times.
They had, yeah.
That final, I mean, I think we said last week history doesn't count for much, but I don't know if that might have. But yeah, the Tigers, a big scalp, I guess, away from home as well. That'll add to the confidence, I think.
Yeah, when we were chatting with Alec Waterman a little earlier on in the show, they've got this approach that every game is like a sudden death final to them. They treated that game like a sudden death final because they wanted to go into the bye knowing that they could still contend for a final spot. East Perth, in the meanwhile, they'll go into the bye with an opportunity gone begging. They could lose top spot on the ladder to Peel Thunder this week. And I have to say, the last 2 games, East Perth haven't been at their best.
Yeah, it's a contrast, isn't it? I mean, you win one week or you lose one week and you're sort of up, then you're down on the ladder, so to speak. It can change so fast. But I think from East Perth's point of view, they'll just be so eager for the next game. They don't want the bye to kick them down too much. So
Absolutely.
They'll just be eager to get back out there, train hard and move on and put it past them because you can't really have much time to dwell in this competition.
Absolutely, especially since the competition is so even. You can't have time to dwell on your losses. You've got to get back out there and give the best that you can. There were some positives, has to be said, for East Perth. Mitch Crowder, who had a bit of a scare with his shoulder, but he came back on and, of course, played some really good football, as he always does. Maybe not to the standard that he was after. Hammer Brayshaw was a little bit quiet in patches, only had the 20 disposals. Tom North had 18, was very good off half-back and also in midfield. Michael Randall had the 20 as well. Tom Medhat had plenty of supply given to him up forward, but he couldn't convert it. 1 goal, 3. Same thing can be said for Liam Tedesco, 1 goal, 3 as well. So it was a day where goals were a big premium and East Perth just couldn't make the most of it.
Yeah, and they didn't have any multiple goal kickers as well. I know it's hard in the conditions, but I think you're going to struggle most weeks if you don't have someone at least kick 2 or more, as the Tigers did with your Watermans and your Manuels as well.
Absolutely, and of course Claremont's accuracy providing them a valuable win, maybe one of the most vital wins for Claremont this season. That gets them back into the fringes of the 5, winners by 9 points over East Perth. Now, what about this third game? At 3/4 time, West Perth led by some 6 points, and it looked like it was going to go right down to the wire. And then all of a sudden, in the last quarter, 7-6 to nothing in the last quarter gave the reigning premiers a vital 42-point win over the Falcons at Fremantle Oval. 12-10-82 to 5-10-40. It was another slog in the wet conditions, but gee, didn't East Fremantle come out firing in that last quarter? That was a win they needed, and that'll certainly spring them up a little further for the second half of the season.
Came home with a wet sail.
No doubt about it.
And I know Falcons supporters will be really disappointed. They were in a position to win that game.
They shouldn't be disappointed. They should be embarrassed. You know, and I'm going to be honest with you. They showed absolutely no desire in that last quarter. They just honestly turned into training cones. Even though the conditions, didn't suit either side, at the beginning. West Perth, where did that effort go in that last quarter? I mean, they were right in it. They led by some 4 goals in heavy conditions. You do not give up a lead of 4 goals in heavy conditions. And the fact that they did and absolutely stopped in that last quarter, I expect Jason Salicic to put the boys through a fortnight of hell before their next game because they've got Peel Thunder in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a recurring theme, isn't it? I mean, we spoke about that game against Peel Thunder where they just stopped for a passage of play there. And they kept, East Fremantle scoreless in the second term, but then does that come with complacency? We've got this in the bag.
I would think so. I mean, the same thing happened with South Fremantle at home, and the same thing again in the last minutes in the WA Day Derby last Monday week. So there is that issue of complacency, and it's the issue that complacency issue leads to not being able to play a 4-quarter game of footy. East Fremantle didn't do that, but they still were able to finish off strongly in that last quarter and overrun the Falcons.
Yeah, and you look at the numbers; they just had so many more ball winners overall. Milan Murdoch 30 disposals, Kyle Baskerville 24, Jack Cleaver 26 off a half-back flank. And then you look at West Perth, and their highest possession getter was Luke Meadows with only 25. Shane Nelson rather on 27, which still very good numbers. But they were just able to get their hands on the ball more when it mattered most, and won the disposal count by upwards of 70 disposals.
It was a bit even.
It's a ruthless competition, and they just, I hate to say they don't have experience. I don't want to put it down to that because East Fremantle have players of a similar age. Jack Cleaver, we just spoke about him. He's only 20 years of age.
Exactly.
So, the list profile, the age profiles aren't too different, but, East Fremantle, they just seem to really, get the job done when it mattered most.
There was one positive, I have to say, for West Perth, and that was in the ruck. Brock Carter, 37 hit-outs, blossoming into a good tap-to-advantage ruckman as well. On the other side of the coin, as far as the ruck battle is concerned, Lachlan Blackiston, didn't he come of age? 61 hit-outs and 19 disposals. What a game.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't think you can have 60-plus hit-outs too many times and lose a game of footy.
Nah, not at all.
But Brock Carter, I mean, he had a good ruck battle with Scott Jones the other week. And 37 disposals, I mean, we can't diminish his performance whatsoever, but at the same time, 61 hit-outs.
You can't beat it.
Say less, really.
Absolutely. You just can't beat it. 61 hit-outs and his follow-up work made his game even more commendable. It was absolutely impressive, and so was the performance of East Fremantle, running on top of West Perth with a big last quarter to run out 42-point winners at Fremantle Oval.
Punt from 50, win. Little too into the game, win. Too cocky, almost a win. Risking it all for the glory, win. It's win-win at the WAFL. Great footy, food and entertainment. Find out more at waffle.com.au.
Yes, win-win big in the WAFL for 2024. Let's take a look at the ladder after 10 rounds. East Perth, despite the loss to Claremont, they remain on top of the ladder, 28 points. Peel Thunder and South Fremantle on 24, and then rounding out the 5, East Fremantle and Swan Districts on 16 points each. Of course, East Fremantle on the percentage, they hold 4th place. Claremont on 16 as well, but they're outside the 5. They could, of course, build a big run for the second half of the season. Subiaco, West Perth and West Coast on 12 points, and Perth rounding out the bottom half of the ladder on 8 points. You look at all those positions on the ladder, only 1 or 2 games separating one position to another. It's completely open competition.
And you win a game, you jump up 2 or 3 spots and, vice versa.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's crazy. I feel like the teams who are winning, in recent weeks by sort of and stamping their authority are coming off losses, and you just sort of wonder should they be doing that, every week, losing and then winning, because it seems to help them. But obviously, you want to win every game you can. But for some reason, I mean, losing a game and then they just come out so much hungry and fight the next week, which is it's only natural.
I mean, imagine one side could be in the 5 with only 10 wins. That's how good this competition is. If you even get 10 wins and you make the 5 only by a split percent or something, you know that you've had yourself a real tough regular season before September.
Yeah, and wins by some margin important. That percentage, I dare say, you're going to get in or you're not going to get in based on percentage for at least 1 or 2 teams.
No doubt about it. Let's get to the votes for round 10 of the Around the WAFL Player of the Year. 1 vote from East Fremantle goes to Kyle Baskerville. Again, his work in midfield and a bit on half back as well, I thought was very impressive, especially in the last quarter.
Led by example, yeah.
He certainly did. Led by example as they needed to under pressure against the Falcons. 2 votes, Alec Waterman of Claremont. 3 goals, a great performance up forward. He was, that main option up forward, and he's been their forward across the season, averaging 1 or 2 goals a game, and he exceeded that expectations. 3 goals in wet conditions, absolutely impressive. 3 votes, Liam Hickmott of Subiaco. Again, impressive. Rate his game very highly. Every week is consistently racking up disposals in midfield, but his work rate has just started to get better and better and better across the season. 4 votes, Lockie Blackiston from East Fremantle, 61 hit-outs, a monstrous display in the ruck, made the difference in those centre clearances for the Sharks, especially in the second half. But the Around the WAFL top gun of round 10, the veteran himself. Age is just a number for Jai Bolton. He gets the 5 votes this week, 37 disposals. He was influential in that win over the Royals.
Not the first time he's got 5 votes, I must say, in the old standard voting system. But a couple of those players, Alec Waterman, and that's why they recruited him back to the club, wasn't it? To have that big power forward, kicking multiple goals each week. And then Blackiston, they found a diamond in the rough there, haven't they? That's really, really exciting, because I know there's been a bit of, talk about Bryn Teakle being a massive out, which obviously is the case. But to replace that and, moving forward, I mean, like for like, really.
Absolutely.
Hopefully,
like for like, you get
sake.
one good ruckman goes out, another good ruckman comes in. And I reckon they found that diamond in the ruck, Lachlan Blackiston. He's going to be huge for the Sharks in the second half of the season. Let's pop up the leaderboard after 10 rounds of WAFL competition. The Around the WAFL Player of the Year, Mitch Crowden, remains in the lead on 12 votes. Then Bryn Teakle is on 8, Isaiah Winder on 7, Jai Bolton gets to the top 10 with 5 votes. Then it's Sam Stubbs, Hayden Schloif, Oliver Eastland, Jacob Blight, Jonathan Marsh, and Jacob Coniglio rounding out the top 10. And at the present time, 43 players now, Rothy, have polled for the Player of the Year voting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I guess, when all the bye rounds are done, and then it's going to be neck and neck to the finish line. I reckon could be sitting here in the last round with not sure who's going to take it out.
Absolutely. Listeners and viewers, who do you think should be the Around the WAFL Player of the Year? We'd love to hear for you to have your say. Let us know in the comments below on the YouTube channel or on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, to check out all the Around the WAFL action. That does it for today's edition of Around the WAFL. It's been another great episode. Ethan, great work as always. I'll see you on Thursday to look ahead to round 11.
Yep, looking forward to it.
Listeners and viewers, we look forward to having your company for round 11's preview. Of course, 3 big matches which could open up the finals race even more, and a chat with Subiaco coach Bo Warden. We'll see you then.